What's up, bozos? I got out to see another movie at the cinema. I can't believe how many movies are actually been out already. We're just like at the end of February, and already there's been so many movies that might even end up being on some people's lists of favorite movies of the year when we get to the end of the year, and we still got fucking ages to go. So it's great to see so many movies at the cinema already. And this was a movie that I was really looking forward to. The trailers obviously were great. Unfortunately, we never really know what we're going to get with the movie after the trailers. I don't even know why I bother watching the trailers, to be honest. I probably shouldn't, because I get annoyed every time I do, because I end up going to see a movie that ends up not being what the trailer is. But I suppose they do a pretty good job with it, with the marketing of this movie. Obviously, the marketing of this movie will really help it. But of course, I'm talking about The Monkey. As usual, when I do these reviews, not only am I as honest as I can and constructive as I can be, so what I do is I try and go through the pros, I go through the cons, and then I'll give you my overall thoughts on the movie in its entirety. But also, where because I am doing that, there will be spoilers. I do try, as I said, to try and give my honest opinion. So to do that, I need to talk about things that may happen in the movies. So I always assume that anybody that is watching these reviews, that you have seen the movie. But if you haven't, then maybe don't watch this yet. Maybe if you want to, go and watch the movie and then come back to this review. Because as I said, I like to try and go into as much sort of detail as I can, as quickly as possible, and give you, as I said at the end, my overall thoughts on the monkey. So let's get right into my pros. So straight off the bat, one of the things that I love about this movie is that you can tell that Osgood Perkins, or Oz Perkins, whatever you want to call him, the director of the movie, who we know directed Longlegs, and obviously he's done other movies before that as well. And as we know from the end of credits, if you saw it of The Monkey, you know that he's got a new one coming out, which looks like it's going back to his sort of more serious, darker sort of undertone than what The Monkey is. But it's quite clear that Osgood Perkins is a fan of Stephen King. I mean, who isn't? And what I really like about that is that you can feel that in his movie, because this does feel like it's like a great. There are moments of like the greatest hits of what a Stephen King movie should sort of be. You know, you've got the music feels very like, Stand By Me, so to speak. Like, even though it might not even be a depiction of the time, the music might not be a depiction of the time of what's in the movie, but it feels like he said, like, let's try and get music that makes people feel like they're watching a Stephen King movie. And they did a really good job with that. Of course, you've got the narration. All Steve, yeah, any of the Stephen King movies that a lot of the time that we remember or make us feel like Stephen King movie, they're always most of the time have narration over it as well, and we get that throughout the movie, which is always fun because sometimes like you don't know how much you're going to be taking out of what you're watching when there's narration, because obviously it's not part of the world that you're watching on screen at that moment. But it doesn't do that in this. It's just like a fun addition. Like the way that they add the narration into the movie is fun, and they do it in a really good way. But of course, as well, it's in Maine. What bloody Stephen King thing isn't in Maine? And of course, with it being something to do with Stephen King, and obviously being based on a short story by Stephen King, it is weird. It is quirky, and it ticks all these Stephen King boxes that you sort of want it to, without going, well, you've just done that, and it's doesn't feel like it fits the movie. Like the things that are feel very Stephen King feel like it's purposeful, but also fits the movie and the style of movie it is. As I said, it's directed by Oz Perkins, so it looks like an Oz Perkins movie, which is really interesting as well, because obviously this isn't a con for me, but I saw like a couple reviews of saying like how like there's not too much to the cinematography and so on, but they've obviously like not seen any Osgood Perkins movies before, like Longlegs and so on, because these movies aren't, they have a visual style to them, but a lot of that is, it feels like that's like a lot of the color grading, and it feels almost like they've got like the fog machine on, like, the highest setting all the time, and everything feels a little bit foggy, a little bit smoggy, and the colors are very desaturated and so on, like that. So but you get that from Osgood Perkins and his the way he makes his movies and the way he makes his movies look. So, like, if you're just saying that now, then you obviously haven't seen these movies and you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, because this movie already feels like we have like a stamp look of what Osgood Perkins movies look like. Like, we know that like his next movie, even the little bit we saw, looks like an Oz Perkins movie. And that's not a bad thing, because he's building up his own style, that we will all, the more we see, and as long as we enjoy the movies that he does, we will be more accustomed to. And like I said, like, this movie looks like, aesthetically, on a technical level, so to speak, cinematography wise, it does look like something like Longlegs in a way, because it's an Oz Perkins movie. So for people who were like, oh, it's not great visually, or it's too dark and so on, well, you're not understanding, because of who it's made by, and that's the type of movies that he makes look like they do. So that's, they can shut up. They're talking shit about that. But he makes movies that, like, I don't always think that they are like take you on a visual journey like a lot of movies can and should. But it's, for me, Osgood Perkins is more about, the construct, the structure of what the story is, and where it goes, and where it starts here, and how it finishes, and how we go on that journey with the characters in it. And it's sort of up to him how he makes that happen, of course. But like, this is a completely different movie to what, say, Longlegs is. Longlegs is a very sort of dark, tension, dread driven movie, and this is more of like a proper fun, popcorn sort of movie, which I'll get into like more details about it. That doesn't, that you only really tell that it's an Osgood Oz Perkins movie, uh, because of the aesthetic of it. Other than that, it feels very different to something like Longlegs. But it is very good. Also, like, his style as well. It always has this sort of like, the time frame of where it is, like whether it's the decade, whatever year or stuff, almost feels irrelevant with what Oz Perkins makes, because it always feels it has this sort of like 70s, 80s look. That even if he made a movie that was set in 2025, I still feel that it would sort of look like it was like in the 70s and the 80s. That's just sort of his aesthetic. But that's not a complaint at all. These are in pros. I like that. I like that he's building up his own aesthetical style. But yeah, he does. It's nice to see this side of him as a director. Bringing out the more of the sort of popcorn movie style, with the really funny moments and the really funny elements in the movie. It's great to see him sort of bring that out in this movie, and see that side to him as a director. And hopefully it's something that he does continue to do. I know, as I said, like, the next movie, I think it's gonna go back to what he has done in the past and so on. But we'll see if he ever goes back to that. The sound design in this is brilliant. I love the sound, as the sound design, the monkey itself, the way that, they're up in the treble and the bass of every bang he's doing, on the drum and so on. It's really well done, the sound design. And it really, like, it's one of those things that really draws you in, and also it makes that every sort of bad thing that happens to somebody in it, because the sound design is so good, it really sort of immerses you in it and really draws you into what's happening. So kudos with the sound design as well. Talking about all the bad things that happen in it, obviously this is a movie that has very fun kills. It has very sort of inventive kills. It has a lot of what I call like the current modern day trend of people exploding or head exploding. I don't know whether it's a case of like whether like they found the key of like making that like so it works with CGI really easy. I don't know. But there's a lot of movies at the moment where people just explode, and I'm not like against it, because it's so funny to watch. But yeah, the kills itself are inventive. They are fun, and you find yourself looking forward to not only the journey of the movie that you're on, but you find yourself looking forward to what is going to happen next to someone, and who that person is going to be, or when is it going to be to that person, because you sort of feel like it's always going to be someone, and who is it going to be, and as I said, and how is that going to happen, and you're excited about that, but you're also excited to see the journey that you're on as well. Performances wise, the majority of them in this are very good. In fact, well, all of the performances are very good in it. Theo James, who plays the main character in it, who obviously plays the older twins, and so to speak, he's very good in this movie. I didn't know whether like he was just going to be like that typical sort of douchebag sort of guy, but he plays the two twins quite differently. But he does both of them very well. His narration works as well. One of the things that was a little bit difficult at times, but that's because it's me. But because I don't know whether it's just because I'm English, but I can always tell when it's an English person doing an American accent, because it's always like a generalized American accent. Unless you're like, say, Tom Hardy, who absolutely loves to do like New York, Boston accents all the time in his movies, because he's a tough guy in that. He loves to do that accent, but a lot of the time you'll find that English people, like, or if they're doing Southern, sort of voices, but when they're just doing like an American voice, it sounds very generalized, and it for me it always sounds like it's an English person putting on an American voice. And so I did get that a lot in watching this movie, but it didn't take away from how good his performance is, what his performance was, his delivery on the lines, his way that he performs the role, very good. And I think a lot of people out there are saying like sort of how good he is in it, and he deserves to. He's very good in this. But the other performances are weird because you've got like loads of little things pop up. Adam Scott pops up in it like near the start, which I didn't expect, and he's obviously funny in it. But Elijah Wood pops up in it as well. Oz Perkins himself pops up in it. But the problem is with those performances is that they sort of felt too much like cameos rather than characters. They were like in it for a little sec, and then they're gone, not to be seen again. And they don't really ever feel like they serve like a purpose. Like they have a purpose to the characters, like in the movie, but it just felt like Elijah Wood is there because it's Elijah Wood, or Oz Perkins is like, oh, I'm going to put myself in this rather than have to go and cast someone else. And it just felt like a cameo. So that was a bit of a shame because obviously he doesn't feel like you're fleshing out like characters or giving them that much of a meaning, whether they're supposed to be good, whether they're supposed to be bad. I don't know. But obviously, at the same time, this movie is very reliant on, the twins, and their, them being younger, who obviously that's played really well. The person that plays the mother in this is absolutely hilarious, and that goes to another thing that I love about this movie is that it does go heavily in on the weirdness and the quirkiness of the movie, or the weirdness and quirkiness of the script. It is a very very darkly comedic script, and it's performed really well, and they do a really really good job at delivering it. And the mother is one of those like characters in it that has some very very sort of like dark lines, and sort of the nihilistic approach of like of life and so on, and the way that she's talking to her kids, that you're like, that's messed up. At the same time, when you're watching it, it's very funny. It makes for a very funny scene, and there's multiple scenes within the movie that she's in. So there's fantastic performances in it. Just sometimes they feel a little bit like cameos, but as I said, this movie is quirky and it's weird. For what we're watching, for what we're hearing, what we're seeing, script wise, and everything like that. It does it all in the best ways, and you couldn't really ask for more than that. But let's get into to my cons of the movie. One of the cons of the movies that could actually be something that in a lot of movies it really does ruin things, make things a little bit boring, but it doesn't do that in this. But it is still a part of one of the problems with a movie like this is that it is, like I said, it's based on a short story by Stephen King, but irrelevant of it being Stephen King, a lot of the time if you're trying to adapt a short story into a movie, full feature length movie, sometimes you lose track of where you are. You're putting in filler scenes. You're struggling to make that runtime. And sometimes, in so many films that I've seen that are based on short stories, you do get bored and you nod off a little bit. And this movie, you don't do that, but there are moments in this movie where it does feel like they're trying to find that runtime. They're trying to ensure that they create this feature length, because for an Osgood Perkins movie, I mean, this is like just over an hour and a half. You always sort of feel like you expect movies for his runtime to be longer. So it did feel like that an hour and a half to create out of the story that it is was a little bit of a stretch, but it's not so much that it affects the movie. And then you're like sitting there, and when I was sitting at the cinema, I didn't really see anybody looking at their phone in moments where they normally would do if they're bored. um that always sort of happens. But yeah, so it's not so off-putting that you're like, well, now I'm bored, and this needs to hurry up, because you're still excited about the journey. But it does fall flat in moments, because it's based on a short story, and it's not, it's trying to be a full feature film. Um, it would be also one of the interesting things as well, and I don't even know if I've even read it. I mean, I've got it. It's obviously part of the Skeleton Crew, but I don't know if I've even read the Monkey, and I will. But I don't know if it explains or expands on the level of scope of the destruction that this monkey or whatever possesses it. I don't know if they say the scope or of destruction that it can create, because you sort of feel like it's only within its immediate presence of, like the twins and the people that it's around. But then we have a moment in the movie where it creates more chaos than what you've seen so far on a larger scale, and it doesn't really evolve on that too much. And I feel like they could have used some of that time where they were looking for the runtime of the movie. They could have spent a little bit more time playing with the scope of destruction, whether that means it takes you like way far out of what the Stephen King short story is. But then, you've also still got to try and create a movie out of it. So I felt like they could have explained or done a little bit more dealing with the scope and the power of what this is. Because you have a scene in it where you're like, oh shit, like it can do more than what it's doing for most of the movie. And then that actually creates more of, like a tension, and it terrifies you a little bit more, because you're like, shit, this thing could do some nasty, nasty things on a big scale. And you only really see that near the end of the movie, and then it ends. So yeah, I would like to have understood or had it explained or seen more of what this is and what the scope of it all is. And like I said in my performance, in my pros as well, one of the cons is that the performances as well. As I said, apart from the mum in it and the twins as kids, and obviously Dio James, the performances just feel like cameos, which was a little bit of a shame. They don't necessarily, as much as I love Adam Scott in what they do, and obviously the iconic Elijah Wood and Oz Perkins is funny in this, but they don't really necessarily feel like integrated into the story. They just feel like they are just part of the movie because they need to make a movie with these characters. They feel more like cameos. So, but overall, there's not a lot of cons with this movie. So let's get into how I feel overall about the monkey. So overall, the Monkey is a really nice departure from what I feel Oz Perkins normally creates. This is a really, really fun movie that is one of those movies that quite a lot of people can enjoy at the cinema. His movies, they can be very slow, they can be very normally dark. With really sinister and nihilistic undertones and themes, and a lot of people might not like that. And I think that this is a type of movie that feels a little bit obviously more universal than those. So as much as I enjoy Longlegs, and I like when he goes with his darker roots, and the way he's creating his stories that he tells on screen with those, I do hope that he does every now and again venture into this more movie that we can see at the cinema, or you can have a watch on a date night, or you can watch with your friends. I really enjoyed it, and a lot of things to enjoy about this is, as I said, is that it is laugh out loud funny, whether it's the way that people are meeting their demise and getting murdered and all that. Whether you're laughing at that, and also it is one of those movies that if you're a sicko like me, then it does sort of show you up in front of other people, because I was laughing my head off during the moments in this movie, whether it was the scenes where people are, as I said, are getting killed, or whether it's the weird and quirky dialogue that's absolutely fantastic and delivered really well, as I said, by Theo James, and the mum character in it as well. Performed really well. I love the quirkiness. I love the weirdness of it. I love weird movies and quirky movies anyway. So this ticked those boxes for sure. But it was fun to see the journey that you go on. And obviously, one thing that I really love is that it feels very Stephen King. Yes, it's based on a short story of his, so it does fall flat every now and again, but you're still excited about the journey you're on and seeing where that goes next and what's going to happen to someone or what someone's going to do. You're excited about that. But also, as I said, one thing that I really do love is that it was nice to feel like I was watching a really good representation of a Stephen King story, and they've put that to screen really well. And Oz Perkins has done a fantastic job. So overall, The Monkey is a movie that I really liked. I think so far it is my favourite film of the year. But you have to let me know in the comments. Let me know in the comments whether you enjoyed The Monkey, whether it's a movie that you think it might be one of your movies of the year when we get to the end of it. But let me know. Let me know in the comments. That's what they're there for. Until next time, stay creepy.